South Africa is under siege, and the most vulnerable in this war, women and children. And that has prompted the president to come up with a plan that will mitigate the gender-based violence crisis.
Given the urgency of the situation, we have developed what we would call an emergency action plan, which will be implemented over the next 6 months. The plan strengthens existing measures and introduces new interventions in 5 principal areas.
The interim plan will focus on prevention strategies, strengthening the criminal justice system, reviewing the legal and policy framework, healing survivors, and engaging in dialogue. The president says there must be no bail or parole for perpetrators, and that harsher sentences must be meted out.
These measures include the establishment of special courts, hiring additional court staff, and the clearing of backlogs at forensic labs.
The plan precedes a broader plan that is still in draft, flowing from the Presidential Gender-Based Violence Summit last year. The private sector will also be called upon to contribute towards a gender-based violence and femicide fund.
Cabinet this morning resolved to direct 1.1 billion rand in additional funding in this financial year to the comprehensive response to gender-based violence. It is the government's intention that the funds appropriated for this program will be raised from within the current budget allocation.
Meanwhile, the president has also called for calm following recent violent protests in the country. He's called on citizens not to damage public property or taint the image of the country on the continent and with investors.
We know that our people are concerned about those who have come into our country illegally and about some foreign nationals who get involved in criminal activity. We understand the concerns of local businesses struggling to compete against businesses that get involved in the importation of counterfeit goods that are sold at prices that are way below what they can match. We share their frustration that some South African employers are employing foreigners over locals.
President Ramaphosa says he's invited former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete and former Mozambican President Joaquim Chissano to South Africa on a fact-finding mission into the causes of attacks on foreign nationals. Their report will be presented to the African Union. Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Meanwhile, MPs have reacted to the president's address, echoing growing calls for legislation that will give harsh sentences for perpetrators of gender-based violence.
Today, women face the onslaught of an oppressor with a different face and a different mandate.
Every single day, 114 women report where they've been raped. Mr. President, I think the greatest tragedy is that no one actually gets arrested. The conviction rate is less than 5%. That's not good enough in our country.
Mr. President, you said earlier on you need tough laws to keep people in jail. The legislation that exists is prioritizing the rights of rapists, of murderers, of child beaters, of children murderers above the victims.
Mr. President, I sometimes wonder whether the state of our nation keeps you and our government up at night. I ask this because the reality is that millions of South Africans don't sleep at night because they live in fear for their lives. They live in fear for their lives because, as you've admitted at the weekend, you lead a lawless nation.
If we want to ensure that we address the issue of violence in South Africa, especially when it comes to women and children, there should be one central word: respect. Respect for yourself, respect for each other, but most important, respect for our differences.
This is an endemic that government must prioritize and tackle head-on. We do not believe that government has done enough to stop gender-based violence. Government has not acted harshly, particularly against politicians who have been found to be committing acts of violence or sexual abuse against women.
For the executive to act decisively and to make manifest the constitutional mandate of safety and security for the people, it might mean that our civil liberties could be affected.
We need to send a strong message that we do not tolerate gender-based violence by having a death penalty for heinous crimes against women and children.
If the parents are drunkards, what are you going to expect from the children? It's like that.
The law must be amended to include femicide and rape cases to carry heavy sentences as a deterrent.
Al-Jamaa wants hard labor in addition to the life sentence from the first day of sentencing. And we want especially men to see the perpetrators engage in hard labor. This will be a deterrent no matter what human rights and democracy NGOs have to say.
A nation that collectively deals with criminality will be able to defeat any scourge of crime. It will not be the death penalty because it has already been declared unconstitutional.